Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Tiffany Palino, and I am the manager here of pre-nursing and CE services. So today we are here to go over some TEAS and HESI practice questions, specifically science, which has always been my favorite subject. So if it's your favorite subject, amazing. If not, hopefully after today we do some practice questions and you feel a little bit more confident. A little bit about myself. I am a nurse. I've been an RN now over 17 years. I've been an educator about 6 years. So guess what? I had to go to nursing school too, right? I had to do some sort of entrance exam, and it was just many, many years ago. So studying, I am totally aware of how that is. So let's get into it. If you are tuning in from the Facebook group or YouTube, welcome. If you're here with me on Zoom, welcome. Feel free to just type your answers in the chat as we go through. All right, let's get started. So the first subject we're going to talk about is chemistry. I loved chemistry back when I was in high school. It was one of my favorite subjects, but it's important in nursing. Why is chemistry important in nursing? You're probably wondering. Well, there's a lot of things that interact, right? And you need chemistry to understand how medications are made and how things work. So let's get into our first practice question. What determines the atomic number of an element? So, this is a really fundamental concept in chemistry. Is it the number of neutrons, the number of protons, the number of electrons, or the atomic mass? Type in the chat. Neutrons, protons, electrons, or atomic mass? Which one helps determine the atomic number of an element? Any guesses out there? I'll give you 1 minute. It is important to spend about a minute on every question so you can get your answers within the time frame that many of these entrance exams have. About a minute per question. That's always good practice. And no guesses? Well, let's break this down. Neutrons, protons, electrons. Protons is the correct answer if that's what you were thinking. Why? What do protons do? It's in the atom's nucleus, and it's the number. It defines the element. Neutrons determine isotopes. They don't define the element. Electrons determine the charge. Remember, those can be positive or negative. And then atomic mass includes both protons and neutrons, but it doesn't define the element itself. So, super fundamental concept, really key to understand the distinctions and grasping kind of the structure of an atom and of a cell. Okay, let's do the next one. Why does an atom become a positively charged ion when it loses an electron? Why does it become a positively charged ion when it loses an electron? So let's explore this a little bit. Remember, electrons have a negative charge. So if they lose one, what happens? It becomes positive, right? Because they lost part of that negative charge. So is it from gaining an electron decreases the number of neutrons, which creates a negative charge? Is it gaining an electron increases the number of protons, making the atom negative? Is it electrons have no charge, but gaining one disrupts the atom's neutrality? Or is it D, electrons have a negative charge, so losing one decreases the overall negative charge to the atom? Remember what I said, that electrons have a negative charge. Any guesses? Put them in the chat. If you guess D, you're absolutely correct, because think about it. If they lose one of the negative charges, then now it becomes positive. So the balance between protons and electrons is really what determines the charge overall. Losing an electron means that the number of protons now exceeds the number of electrons, which in turn means that we have now a positive ion. So atoms in general are made up of protons, neutrons, and electrons. But when you lose an electron, which is that negative, then it decreases the number of negatively charged particles, and therefore it becomes positive. Hopefully that was helpful. I remember when I was learning this, it always helped me to kind of draw it on a piece of paper. Draw my positives, draw my negatives, and kind of understand, count how many more there are. Okay, let's do another one. Using the element symbol shown, determine the correct number of neutrons in this atom. Is it 9, 10, 19, or 28? 9, 10, 19, or 28. So if you notice here, we have a 9 up in the corner. And then we have a 19 also here. So a 9 and then a 19. So those play a role here with how you do this. The atomic number and the atomic mass. The atomic number here is 9, and the atomic mass is 19. And the question's asking how many neutrons. So you simply subtract the atomic number from the atomic mass. So what is my answer if I do that? If I subtract the atomic number from the atomic mass? B, 10. The difference here is 10. So remember our atomic number and our atomic mass. That's how we do this math here. 9 is the atomic number. It's only going to tell me the number of protons. 19 is the atomic mass. That's protons and neutrons. So in order to find the correct number of neutrons, we have to do the math, right? Subtract. Excellent. All right, last one in chemistry. I don't know why it says 8. This should say 4. Sorry. Okay, which of the following statements about chemical bonds is correct? Select all that apply. So, chemical bonds, there's covalent and ionic. So, covalent bonds involves shared electrons. Ionic bonds form between two nonmetals. Ionic bonds occur through transfer of electrons, or covalent bonds can be polar or nonpolar. So, what do we remember about chemical bonds? What's important about chemical bonds? Anything sticking out? Remember, select all that apply. So there's could be one or more than one answer here. And when I do select all to apply, I like to say, is this a true statement or a false statement about whatever we're talking about? So today is about chemical bonds. So I think this is true. They involve shared electrons. I'm not really sure about B. I'm going to come back to it. C, ionic bonds do occur from the transfer of electrons. And then covalent bonds, they can be both polar or nonpolar. So I'm going to guess A, C, and D. Wow, look at that. So the reason why B is wrong is because ionic bonds form between a metal and a non-metal, not two nonmetals. So it's a metal and a non-metal. Excellent. All right, that was chemistry. Got that out of the way. Let's do anatomy and physiology. Okay, here we go. During strenuous exercise, a patient's breathing rate and heart rate increase. Which two organ systems are primarily responsible for delivering more oxygen to muscles and removing carbon dioxide? So, what two systems or organ systems, so pay attention to this last part of this, are primarily responsible for delivering more oxygen to muscles and removing carbon dioxide? Respiratory and nervous system, cardiovascular and muscular system, respiratory and cardiovascular system, or muscular and endocrine system? What do we think? Type it in the chat. Type in the chat. What do you think? I think it involves the respiratory system because we're talking about oxygen. So therefore, I could probably eliminate two of these answers, which is B and D. But is it the respiratory and the nervous system or the respiratory and the cardiovascular system? What has to do with my heart rate? What system? Nervous or cardiovascular? Awesome. Cardiovascular. If you guessed cardiovascular, you are correct. So the cardiovascular system is going to help remember what the cardiovascular system does, right? It's all about the blood flow through the heart. And what happens is it picks up oxygen and then delivers it to the lungs. That's what ends up happening. And then it's also going to remove that CO2. And then the respiratory system is all about that gas exchange, right? Between the oxygen and CO2. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, another one. A person suddenly stands up after sitting for a long period and briefly feels dizzy. What two body systems are working together to detect this change and help restore proper blood flow to the brain? Okay, so let me picture this. They're suddenly standing up after sitting for a long time and they're feeling dizzy. Hmm. Okay, what could this be? Nervous and cardiovascular, skeletal and muscular, digestive and urinary, or muscular and respiratory? So, what would cause them to feel a little dizzy? That's what this is asking here. What would cause them to feel a little dizzy? I don't think it's the digestive system and the urinary system because that has to do with digesting food and going to the bathroom. I don't really think that's what we're talking about here. Anything else we can kind of cancel out? Anything else we can kind of cancel out? So skeletal and muscular. So skeletal and muscular is more about our movement, but it doesn't really have anything to do with being dizzy. So I'm also going to cancel that one out. C doesn't, excellent, Liliana. Doesn't make you feel dizzy because the equilibrium is off. Yes, good. So the correct answer here is A. The two systems that work together to detect this change are nervous system and cardiovascular system. Because what's probably happening here is their blood pressure might be going down and the heart is going to beat faster. And then what ends up happening is the blood vessels constrict or tighten, and then you're not getting enough blood to the brain, so it causes you to get a little bit dizzy. So remember, the nervous system is the primary responder here. And that was pretty relevant with feeling dizzy. That's your neuro, right? So I want you to look at the question again. And it's saying, what is going to detect this change and help restore proper blood flow? So everything to do with blood flow is the heart. And this sudden change was the dizziness, and that is your nervous system. Excellent. All right, let's do another anatomy question. What muscle type would be involved in the muscle contractions of the stomach, allowing you to mechanically digest food into nutrients which are necessary for life? So, a lot of words there, but what is it really saying? What muscle is involved in contracting of the stomach? Is it cardiac, skeletal, smooth, or striated? Now, cardiac sounds like the heart, and I don't think that's what we're talking about here, so I'm going to eliminate that one right away. Excellent, Liliana. You absolutely got that right. If you guess smooth muscle, you are correct. Remember, our stomach is smooth. Smooth muscles are in those hollow organs, like your stomach and the digestive system. If it says cardiac muscle, that has everything to do with your heart. Skeletal muscle has everything to do with your skeleton, right? So the muscles that are connecting from your bones to other bones. And then striated is both cardiac and skeletal muscle. It's kind of describing what it looks like. Excellent. Last one in the anatomy category. What structure carries signals from the body and back to the brain? What structure carries signals from the to the body and back to the brain? So to the body and back to the brain. What signals out and back in? So command center, peripheral nervous system, muscle contraction, or central nervous system? Which one? So to the body and then back to the brain. So, do you know what a command center is? A command center is actually our central nervous system. It acts as our command center. So, a trick here is when you have two similar answers, it's either one or none of those. And in this instance, it's not because they're too similar. So, the command center um, is our brain and our spinal cord. So, peripheral nervous system or muscle contraction. I don't think we're talking about muscle contraction here. So therefore, we're going to finalize here the PNS. So it includes all nerves outside of the brain and the spinal cord. Very good. It carries signals to and from the central nervous system. So remember, our central nervous system is our brain and our spinal cord. But the question was asking about what carries signals to the body and to the back to the brain. So remember that communication between the brain and the rest of the body has to be that peripheral nervous system. Very good. So, talking about the command center or the central nervous system, that's the brain, it doesn't refer to signal carrying function. Instead, what happens in the brain? We process information, which hopefully you're all doing right now. You're processing all these questions we're talking about. Muscle contraction is just, we're contracting a muscle, like if I were to lift weights or something. So hopefully you can understand that if you have a little bit of trouble between the PNS and the CNS, I recommend kind of studying those side to side and kind of understanding those key differences. It's going to help you when you get into nursing school as well. All right, let's go on to some biology. Which of the following correctly matches the carbohydrate type and function? The structure, type, and function. So we're talking about carbohydrates here. Monosaccharides, sucrose serves as an immediate energy source. Disaccharides, glycogen is stored in the liver and muscles for energy. C is polysaccharides, glycogen is stored in the liver and muscles until needed for energy. Or D, monosaccharides, glycogen in the simplest form of carbohydrates used for energy. So, have to remember these terms and what they all mean. So, we're talking about carbohydrates, the structure, type, and function. So, what is correct? Pay close attention to these beginnings, right? Because we have poly, we have di, we have mono. So here's something too. A and D have similar monosaccharides, right? They're both talking about monosaccharides. So if they're the same, it's either one or none of those. So is this true about monosaccharides? Is this true about no monosaccharides? Or am I going to talk about B and D? So spend a moment. All about memorizing terms here. So what is true? What is correct? One more minute. I know, tough one, right? Okay, here's a suggestion for when you study, guys. Put these on index cards, put the term in the front, and then put the description on the back. Oh, Jamila in Facebook, you're saying two answers. There's only one correct answer here. Can you narrow it down? Can you narrow it down? If you guess C, you're absolutely correct. C. So, polysaccharide. So, glycogen is a polysaccharide. It's stored in the liver and the muscles until the body needs the energy. Remember, our liver stores glycogen for later for when we need energy. It's then broken down into glucose and it helps maintain sugar. So, sucrose is a disaccharide, not a monosaccharide. That's why that one was wrong. Glycogen is poly. Okay, guys, glycogen is poly. How do I remember that? Poly makes me think of like a lot of different functions, can help me do a lot of things. That's how I remember that. And then again, monosaccharides. Basically, monosaccharides are the simplest form of carbohydrates, but it's not glycogen. So that's why that was incorrect. Okay, guys, so glycogen is a polysaccharide. Okay, let's do another biology question. This is a select all that apply. So read each answer choice and think if it's true or false. So which of the following statements about enzymes are true? Select all that apply. So enzymes, talking about everything to do with enzymes. So they really play a crucial role, right, in the body. They help speed up chemical reactions. Okay. So enzymes lower the activation energy required for reactions to occur. Or B, enzymes are consumed during chemical reactions and must be replaced. C, enzymes bind to specific substrates in a lock and key fashion. D, enzyme activity can be affected by temperature and pH. Or E, enzymes speed up the chemical reactions without being used up. So I did just mention they speed up chemical reactions. So I'm going to say I think that's true. So if they speed up chemical reactions, what else do you think they do? And I think a key thing to know here is, do they stay intact? Do they stay intact or are they consumed or do they bind? What do you think? One more minute on this one. I know enzymes kind of tough. Okay, Jamila's saying C and D. You are correct. And guess what? There's one more thing. Is it A or is it B? Do they lower the activation energy required for reactions to occur, or are they consumed? Well, if I said they're not consumed, right, they do stay there. So it's A, C, D, and E. Excellent, excellent. Remember, they're not consumed. They remain intact, and they can be reused and reused and reused. So they lower activation energy. It makes it really easy for these chemical reactions to occur. And they bind for that lock and key because that's going to ensure that we have correct reactions. And then pH and temperature affect the enzyme activity because extreme changes can kind of affect how it functions. And then they're catalysts, so they just speed things up. If you've heard that term catalyst, that's what that means. Okay, another one. What is the primary difference between the nucleus and um, the nucleus in a eukaryotic cell? Sorry if I totally botched that word. Eukaryotic cell, sorry. Okay, is it the nucleus produces ribosomes while the nucleus stores genetic information? B, the nucleus is responsible for DNA while the nucleus assembles ribosomes. C, the nucleus controls cellular activity and contains DNA while the nucleus produces ribosomes. Or is it D, the nucleus regulates gene expression while the nucleus synthesizes protein? So, what is the difference between the nucleus and different cells? In this specific cell, what is the key difference? Remember that nucleus is the control center, right? The nucleus is the middle. It contains DNA. Any guesses? If you guessed C, you're absolutely correct. Good job. So, it's the control center, contains DNA, and really directs cellular activity. So the nucleus is located inside the nucleolus, sorry, located inside the nucleus is responsible for ribosome. So the nucleolus, which is inside the nucleus. All right, last section here is scientific reasoning. And I picked all these because they're all part of the test plan for TEAS and HESI. So, scientific reasoning. Here we go. What is the function of a placebo in a medical trial? Why do they give placebos? Is it to provide an alternative form of treatment? Is it to ensure that every participant receives active medication? Is it to serve as an inactive substance for comparison with actual treatment? Or is it to measure how different independent variables interact? Why do we give placebos? Very good, Liliana. Good job, Jamila. Yes, it's inactive, right? Inactive substance. Excellent job. So it's harmless, inactive. It doesn't have anything. Sometimes it's like a sugar pill or something. But really, you want to give it to that control group and to assess the real true effect of an actual treatment. Which of the following are important factors when analyzing the design of an experiment? So analyzing the design of the experiment. This is a select all that applies. So think about what is true about the design when you're analyzing the design of an experiment. Ensuring a small sample size and repeated trials for reliability. Keeping all conditions except the independent variable. Allow participants to choose whether they receive the treatment or placebo. Maintaining controlled variables across groups or changing multiple variables at once to see various effects. So there's multiple answers here. Multiple answers here. What do we think? Do we think it's A, ensuring large sample size and repeated trials for reliability? Yeah, the design, we probably should have that. There's key factors, right? We want a large enough sample size. It's gonna help make sure this is valid. Okay, what else? What else? Keep everything constant. I think that's important in an experiment design. We don't want anything. Um, very good. A, B, and then the next one is D. Yes. Excellent job, Liliana. So keeping all conditions, you want to keep everything constant. Oops, I didn't mean to cross that out. And then finally, maintaining controlled variables. Excellent. Because C is not correct. You don't want to allow them to choose their own treatment because there's bias. We don't want bias. And then changing multiple variables is really not going to help. Okay, last question for you all. Ooh, this is a big one. So, which of the following lists of levels of biological organisms are correct from smallest to largest? Smallest to largest. Are we starting with a molecule or are we starting with an atom? That's probably something you want to think about. And then we can kind of take it from there. Because look, we have two answers that start with a molecule and two answers that start with an atom. So if we don't start with a molecule, we start with an atom. So that cancels these two out first, no matter what. So now what is the order? Is it atom, molecule, cell, organelle, tissue, organ systems, organism? Or is it atom, molecule, organelle, cell, tissues, organs, organ system, organism? Which one? Which one? So really this part here, is it a cell or an organelle? That's what we need to figure out. What's next? If we're going from smallest to largest. Let's see, we start with an organelle. Yes. Here's some pictures for you guys. So remember, it's an atom, then a molecule, then an organelle, then a cell, because the cell has a lot more components with it, right? Then we have that tissue, then that organ, then the system, and then the organism, which is the body. Excellent. Excellent job, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. That is the end of my time. I host these every month on the first Tuesday of every month. So feel free to tune back in the beginning of March. We're going to do another webinar. So that should be up on the website tomorrow or later on today. And yes, keep doing practice questions if you're taking the TEAS soon. Keep doing those practice questions. The key here is to make sure you understand the why and then understand the rationale. So spend time with the rationales. And if you wanted to see any of our products, we have the question bank here, some on-demand videos. Here's a SurePass, and then those live webinars, just wait until later today. I will post the next one for next month. All right, everyone. Awesome job. Happy studying. And you got this, Archer nurses. Take care.